welcome to episode 2 of the Vault podcast. This is going to be hopefully a little bit longer. If you couldn't tell from the first episode, we were just kind of getting our name out there, just so if you stumbled onto us, you knew what you were getting into. I'm back. I'm Zane.
This is Brent.
And today we're going to give you the Vault State of the Music address. It may sound cheesy, but we're just going to basically tell you where we see music, basically the state of music currently. And that's everything from music, sales of music, music industry, concerts, give our opinions on all of that and where we see it going in the future. Well, we can start out by talking about sales of music. It's very rare for people to buy music anymore. It seems like people download music for free all the time, don't think anything about it. And personally, I just think you lose a lot when you're working strictly with digital and not physical music. I understand the ease of use, the instant gratification, the ability to carry, thousands and millions of songs on you at all times. But I think having a digital file as opposed to having a record, a tape, or a CD even loses its feel. Brent, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, I remember as a kid, there was something special about actually making the trip to the store and, buying the album. When I first started, I was buying the tapes. I still remember, I think my first cassette tape was, Meatloaf.
Awesome.
And, I just, there was something special about it. And you sat there and, you pulled out the booklet, you went through it. If there was lyrics, you read the lyrics, you checked out the artwork. And, it helped you get into the music as far as I'm concerned. You listened to the whole thing. It was kind of a whole atmosphere.
And just so you guys don't think we're like old geezers or anything, this is like, late 80s into early 90s to mid 90s, even the late 90s even. I mean, we didn't really start seeing the downloading of music become popular until early 2000s. Oh, I guess maybe late 90s. And I'm guilty as anybody, when the downloading first came out, I was like, oh man, you get unlimited music at your fingertips on the internet. But I probably shouldn't admit that I downloaded the music, but I can honestly say that after downloading a few albums, I realized that it's really not worth it personally because I missed the artwork. I missed, like you said, going to the store. And to me, it became less of a hunt. You'd go to the record store and you would find these imported bands from all over the world. And if you found one, you had to pick it up because you couldn't find it. But you can get it on the internet and find anything you want. And it just kind of loses its luster.
Yeah, I remember going, whenever I first started really heavily getting into music, Best Buy was real big.
Yeah.
And I would just go and depending on the mood I was in, I would go to the rock section, the rap occasionally, even the country a few times. And I would just look at the artwork on the actual CD cover. And, if it was like, oh, yeah, this is really cool, I would just buy it just to check it out. And I found a lot of cool stuff that way.
Yeah, same thing. I still do that to this day. When I'm going through flea markets or record stores and I'm looking for vinyl, especially if it's really obscure, like anything from the 80s back, there's so much of that stuff because that's kind of the, music was still huge then. And a lot of that stuff, there's bands coming out of the woodwork, a lot of DIY punk bands, metal bands, hip hop, all that stuff, people putting out everything. And a lot of times you would just judge it by the album artwork. Sometimes it was totally awesome and it would leave you with a band you'd love forever. And then other times it'd come back to burn you. Can you think of anything right offhand of examples of those personally for you?
Honestly, the first one I picked up solely by artwork was probably Dimmu Borgir.
Awesome.
And, I mean, it was just, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I wasn't really, I'd listened to a little bit of Cradle of Filth, and that was pretty much my black metal, library at the time. I think I had their Dusk in Her Embrace was my only black metal, and I was halfway scared to listen to it. And, I see this, I think it was the Spiritual Black Dimensions?
Yeah, that's I think that's the one, because you originally told me about the band, and I think that's the one you had.
Yeah, and, I picked that up, and I don't know what the heck this is, but I have to listen to it. And I ended up falling in love, and it helped get me into the actual genre of black metal. I started looking.
it keeps
Go
you
ahead.
going with the band too. Like
Right,
you
yeah. I
want to
mean,
get more of their CDs from the past, before and after that.
yeah. And I ended up buying one. I think I don't remember the name of the band, but I thought the cover looked really cool, and it was one of the worst albums I've ever picked up in my life.
I wish you
I
told me
mean, it
what it
was
was
bad.
now. We need to do a
I
review on that if you could ever remember what it is.
Yeah, I'll have to go through my collections. I'm pretty sure I've still got it. I've never thrown away a CD that wasn't, broke in half. So,
I used to trade a lot, but hey, that's another thing that's lost. And with digital music, there's no tape trading. There's no burning CDRs, making mixtape CDRs, making mixtapes. All that stuff's gone. So it's hard for people that weren't around during that time, or even way before us,
yeah.
to grasp it. But man, it meant something to just just get together and talk about music. People don't do that anymore, which I'll use that as a segue into our next topic, which is basically how music is portrayed in society, in American society. I know it's different, especially in Europe, from people I've talked to from there. Rock music, especially of any kind, is just legendary over there. And that's why a lot of American bands go over there to play, and not as much here, because there's just no live music. The appreciation for live music just seems to have gone downhill. Personally, for me, and you can get to this in a second, Brent, but for me, a lot of music now, it's all driven by pop. Even like I remember mid 2000s, it seemed like rap and hip hop was a driving force, but now it just seems like it's just pop music with like techno beat, and it's all auto tune and no actual bands playing. And it seems like a lot of it is marketed towards being in TVs, being commercial, or putting out a single on iTunes or a video game, not necessarily actually making a piece of art that somebody's actually going to buy. You can go ahead with your thoughts on that.
One thing I've noticed is there's always, especially now it seems, and maybe this is just really a weird thing to notice, but it seems like there's always like two, almost like most albums now, there's two totally different sides to it.
Yeah.
Even, take a band that I absolutely loved, when the first album came out, and that was Slipknot. I hadn't really, when that first album came out, I was like, holy crap, what is this? This is great. And, the only song I had heard was Wait and Bleed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, this song is great, but then you get into the rest of the album, and the rest of the album sounds nothing like that.
Yeah.
And, it almost makes me sad. I mean, it's a great song. It's a fantastic album. I still listen to it. But it's like they have to have this pop, kind of catchy, happy song, and then you get to their actual stuff that they really want you to actually listen to.
Right, and that's one thing. There's a lot of really popular pop R&B, anything that's radio friendly, or commercials or whatever. There's a lot of them that actually, when you start, I can't think of anything right offhand, but I've heard, like, say you hear a song on the radio and you think, oh, this sucks because the poppy song they're playing or whatever, and you actually, if you get online, like, which we can get into this again with going back to the digital music. You can get on YouTube and just search some of their other songs, and you find out, some of them pretty quick, that there's a lot more to them than just that pop single. And yeah, it's like you said, sometimes there's two different sides, and they've got to use that popular radio-friendly song, I guess, to draw people in. But, then part of that, too, is a lot of them, because of music industry, and we can talk about, well, that basically goes with what we said about physical music. Everything's dominated by iTunes, and a lot of bands don't even put out full albums anymore. They'll put out an iTunes single every now and then, just because it's more economical all the way around for the consumer and for the band. So you lose the luster of finding those kind of hidden gems. You get 15 tracks on an album, and, hidden track 8, track 9, you find something that's just totally awesome. It just seems like that's kind of lost now.
Yeah, and even like, the Mushroom Head, the Double X album, what was it, like song 49?
Yeah, 49. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And, there were two different versions of that. Because I remember you had one that had, I don't remember what it was, but it was like a skit or something they had done. And mine had a redone version of Blomp or something.
Right, and going back to the physical music thing, that's the other thing is putting out, different rare versions or,
Yeah.
picture discs, different limited edition stuff. I mean, I've got I think I have an Immortal album that's like 300 copies. That's it.
Yeah.
And to people who listen to music now or say they're music fans, like that means nothing to them. And I think it's totally awesome, like not from a monetary standpoint, but just the fact that you have a piece of music that there's only, X amount of, period.
Yeah. And instead of, like that whole U2 iPhone debacle thing.
Yeah, where everybody gets your music that didn't pay for it, and it's like it's not like people. Most people I know that got the iPhones that got U2 on there were pretty upset because they're not U2 fans.
Well, right, and in all honesty, though, it may prove later on to be a good thing because I mean that turned into a complete debacle.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I mean, I guess if you want to say there's a good silver lining in this, it's that maybe bands will learn from that.
Yeah,
and not do it in the future. So
yeah, that leads us to our next topic, which would be live music and concerts. Going back to the state of music in the industry, people are downloading music illegally, not buying albums, and people say it doesn't hurt the artist or it doesn't hurt the record company, but if that was the case, you wouldn't have bands on Kickstarter asking for money to fund their next album. That was completely unheard of even 10 years ago. Even DIY hardcore punk bands would put out their own cassette tape on their own dime without asking anybody else for anything, and then just relying on word of mouth through playing live music all the time and just nonstop touring.
Well, I for some reason I got to thinking of, I remember a story you'd shared a while back on Abigail Williams, where they were basically going to quit because they weren't making any money at all.
Yeah, it was actually costing them, I believe, to make music, and they weren't making enough on the road. It was costing them more to stay on tour, just losing money every way you could think of. They were losing money.
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw them in concert, there in town, and, I mean, how small was the crowd? I mean, there was like, 20 people?
Yeah, hardly anybody. And, I don't know what that goes back to, because I think it's just something with the United States, honestly, because a lot of times when you see even the really, really obscure bands, you see YouTube videos of them playing live festivals in Europe or even Japan. That's still really popular there. And the place is just packed, but they can play a tiny bar, 30 minutes from us, and they can't get anybody.
Yeah, it makes me think of Man of War.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I don't think they play. They might play like one U.S. show a year, maybe like a festival, but they play Europe all the other.
Well, right. I mean, they get like 15 people and a blogger.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing against bloggers. It's just that's all they get over here. It's sad because you've got this awesome band and they have to stay over in Europe because no one will go watch them.
And then I've also heard of I think two bands I just recently heard of, which I'm obviously a diehard fan of, and you guys will figure this out eventually. Listen to the podcast, but Cadaver from Germany and Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats, both of them toured United States in the past year, and both of them in an interview said how difficult and how expensive it was. The logistics of everything, people, the crowds not being what they are here, what they are there, and the crowds being new. I mean, you take some kind of throwback bands or any kind of an obscure genre, that's not pop or not rap, and put them, and even still, if you put something like that, you could take a product from another country that's really popular and put them here, and if they haven't been in full rotation on Pandora or iHeartRadio or not been featured in a commercial, nobody's going to know who they are.
Well, yeah, it's even, makes me think, my wife's a huge, pop country fan, much to my chagrin, but, God bless her for it, I guess. But, she goes and sees bands that fill, college basketball stadiums in this area. And, I think like Carrie Underwood, and stuff like that. And we go see, death metal legends, Cannibal Corpse, and they lose money.
Yeah, no kidding. And then the other thing is the band that loses money stays around another 10 years, while the band that packs the basketball stadium, you don't hear from in 2 years.
No.
I mean, that's rare. Like Rascal Flatts. I mean, come on, how long have those guys been doing that?
Oh man.
It just can. I mean, I can't say anything bad about them. I mean, I'm not really a fan, but
Right.
as far as like they consistently put out music, whether or not it's good, bad, indifferent, sounds the same, it doesn't matter. They still sell out concerts. You can't say that about a lot of those artists like that.
That's actually true, because I mean, how many of whenever the bro country thing started,
Yeah.
there was like a few dozen bands, and now there's only like really 2 or 3 big ones anymore.
Right.
So I mean, thank God for that. But
The other thing, and this is something me and you like, not to get super political here or anything, but another thing that is kind of drawn me and you, because we talked about it off air, away from going to shows, is security. And I mean, you can look back as far as, just right off the bat, I think it was Woodstock 99 when Limp Bizkit was playing, and they started setting fires everywhere, and there was looting and rape and all kinds of, fires, obviously.
yeah,
But then, just recently, locally here, there's been gang beatings outside of these clubs where these bands play. We've actually been inside shows where there's been, crazy fights. And it just gets to a point where it's just not worth it anymore. And it sucks because you lose the experience of checking out the band. And because of, failed security. Go ahead, run with it. What do you got to say about it?
well, I mean, there's not a whole lot really to add. It's sad. It hurts the bands. I mean, it hurts your local businesses and everything. I don't know really how you fix it without turning things into a police state, which nobody wants that.
No, yeah.
So I mean, I don't know if that's so much a state of the music or just a sign of the times.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a mixture of both. Sign of the times and state of music. I mean, you're going to see a lot less and less. I mean, personally, when let's see, it was basically early to mid 2000s. I mean, locally they were pulling in, whether it was rap, country, rock, doesn't matter what it was. They were pulling in all kinds of bands from everywhere. And now it's just if you get a major band to come here, it's kind of a big deal. Or if they do get a major band to come here, it's something really popular. And I'm not always that interested in going to see it anyway, but and that kind of going full circle here back to the beginning of our show, that drives me actually wanting to go pick up physical music even more, because now I can save that money that I was spending on concerts, merch, anything like gas, tickets. I can now put all that money into getting new bands' music, which is what, that's why we go to the shows in the first place, is because of music, nothing else. You got anything to add on that?
No, I mean, I agree. It's, I mean, I used to love going to concerts and stuff, for the bands that, you didn't know that were touring with, when we went and watched Spirit Caravan, I hadn't ever heard of Sleep. And, they're an awesome band, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed watching them. I never would have heard them otherwise. But that, same show, about 20 minutes after we left the area, there was a riot.
Yeah.
And so, with the internet and everything, I can go and look and see who they're touring with. I can check them out on YouTube. And then if I like them, I can go somewhere else and do it. And, I mean, I hate saying it that way, but.
Yeah, and it's just a sad state. And, we're kind of jumping all over the place here, but as far as like talking about picking and choosing the bands, I mean, you can kind of say the same thing with like music. I mean, I would venture to say the bigger part of the population is not rich. And when you look at an album that's, I'll just say an actual LP record is $25 or even $15, or, that the person could just go online and steal it for free. You know what I mean? It just loses everything, the power of music as far as like people discovering it just seems to be lost now. You got anything to say on that?
No, I agree. Honestly, I really do. It's, I mean, of course, I remember, when I first started getting into music real heavy, I'd go and drop, 60, 70, 80, $100 at, Best Buy or, even some of the local record stores and stuff, and it wasn't anything. But at the same time, I remember I bought, when I was really into, like Cradle, I went and bought their Vampire album, and it was import, and I think I paid like $50 for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've
And
done that too. I've dropped. I'm not gonna lie about this. I don't know if I'm proud of it or not, but I've actually spent entire paychecks on music. No joke on that. I remember I was in high school and I remember getting paid, and I literally went to Springfield to CD Warehouse and spent the whole thing.
yeah, I've come close. I haven't been that bad, but I'd wait till payday and go pick up, like a box album or something, of some older band.
Yeah, and
And
that's another thing we're taught. That's another thing we can kind of jump across to. Those compilations. Remember picking those things up so you could discover new bands, and that's something that's totally dead.
oh yeah, I used to love getting those. And I think the last one I got I think it was Ozfest like '04,
Yep.
and that was like the last compilation I think I've even seen.
Yep. And speaking of that, a little bit off topic here, but we are wanting to do something to kind of bring that back. We're looking for unsigned bands that it doesn't matter what genre it is. If you're hearing this, get a hold of us, and we're looking to get some of your music. Eventually, if we can get enough stuff together, we're looking to make some rare copies of these discs on a very limited scale, and we're going to give them away to a certain amount of people to get just music exposure. Nobody's going to make a dime off this. In fact, it's actually going to cost us money to do it.
Right.
But we're trying to bring back the authentic, feel of, getting, that this. If we can get a bunch of bands together that want to do something like this, then it's going to bring back the old school tape trading days, where we're just making DIY stuff and getting it out there so people can hear music.
Yeah, and this is, part of the good stuff about the technology. I mean, we've kind of spent, the better part of this time, kind of, ragging on how technology's hurt music and stuff, but this is part of the really good stuff. I mean, bands can set up Facebook pages, they got Twitter, everything under the sun now for social media to get exposure and stuff. And they may not be able to get signed, but if we can get these compilations into people's hands, they can get on your sites, they can, help order music and, all sorts of stuff, and maybe actually get some great local, bands or other bands around that may otherwise not be heard.
Right, and that's actually going into our next topic is basically where we see music headed in the next, 5, 10, 15 years. And when I said music, I strictly meant like music. Music's not going to die. I mean, it's more thriving now than it probably ever has been. It's just that the mainstream people or the average person doesn't see it that way. They're music listeners. They're not music fans. They don't
Right.
go out of their way to find these, bands that don't have record deals, that have that have 3 songs recorded on a cassette tape they did in a basement. That kind of stuff. Just when there are bands out there doing that, when they're just, doesn't matter record quality, it doesn't matter recording quality, just getting their music out there, however, by any means necessary, and playing shows anywhere they can, bars, basements, people's houses. Again, doesn't matter the style of music, country, rap, rock, metal, whatever. That's where music is, and that's where it's going to continue to go. Hopefully we can just change the minds of some people to get out there and find the music, whatever it is you're looking for.
No, but even on in that, I mean, there's going to be some, just where music's going kind of in general. I know there's bands out there, and one guy I'm a huge fan of is Sturgill Simpson in country.
I got to cut you off right there. Guys, we just posted the review on his album. What's the title again?
High Top Mountain.
I just went and listened to the song you said, that the one that you first heard that you had to buy the album.
Yeah.
I felt the exact same way. As soon as you posted that review, I checked out that first song. I immediately went to eBay and started looking for the records and found them reasonably priced, $15, $16 for an actual LP. So I'm going flea market shopping for records tomorrow, but if I don't find any good stuff, as soon as I get home, I'm going to order that. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. I just, there's going to be people like that, and even his new album, he's got a new one out. I haven't gotten around to doing the review on it yet, but I'm going to soon. And it's called Meta Modern Sounds in Country Music, and it is definitely a country music album, but it's not, kind of your cheesy stuff you hear on the radio, even though thankfully, and I can't believe I'm actually saying this, I'm actually glad he ended up, I think, top 25 with one of his songs on there. And he's not really compromising. I mean, whenever you have his new CD has a lot of kind of esoteric stuff, and I can't tell if he's joking around or if it's serious, and I absolutely love that. I mean, one of the songs is called Turtles All the Way Down. And it touches on, like Buddhist themes and stuff like this. And for a country album to do that, that just blows my mind.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's great. And, I'd mentioned a little bit earlier that there used to be a whole lot of the bro country bands, and they're going away, and people are going into, they still want that country sound. And, people like Sturgill Simpson are giving them that. And even, if you want to go a little further underground with like Jake Orvis.
Right.
Fantastic musician, puts on a great show, great albums. These people I think are helping music head to the right way. And even, your Muddy Roots festivals and all that are gaining in popularity. And, you're having a nice kind of underground surge. Like you said, these people are trading songs and stuff, kind of underground. And it's actually helping change music. You're seeing a lot of, your Taylor Swifts and all them are changing genres. And
yeah.
I think it has to do in large part to, kind of the push from underneath. These people, they like their country, the George Jones and the Hank Williams and, God bless him, Hank 3 and all them, that's the kind of country sound a lot of people want. And I think it's actually helping, the underground scene's really helping to push and change the mainstream in ways that many people don't see.
Right. And that has to do, I can't pick the age group here. I know most people know what I'm talking about, but we'll just use your country example. Most of the people that are fans of that true country music are older, and there's a gap where country music to a certain demographic is what's currently played on the radio. They don't know, the old stuff. And if they hear that, they're like, oh, that's not country music. But that's how I feel about modern country music is it's not country. It's pop, kind of rock even.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's rap.
Yeah. I actually had kind of forgotten about that until you just said it. But what it's going to take is it's going to take people kind of stepping out of their comfort zone. And even if you want to just take country, start listening. If you're a modern country radio fan, start listening to older stuff. Start listening to these underground country roots bands, and then just reach out from there. And that's what it's going to take to really keep all the music alive, keep it going, and keep bands going, keep albums selling, what's left of them. And, there could be a resurgence. The last 2 years, I don't remember where I read the report, but vinyl sales are actually up. And there's a lot of, I know Best Buy's I think they're overpriced, and I don't like their selection, but that's, beside the point. They carry a lot of vinyl now. CD Warehouse carries a lot of vinyl. Haven't seen any cassette tapes recently, but that'd be pretty sweet if they would start making those.
That would be sweet.
I know some punk bands and metal bands still make cassettes, but that's what it's going to take. So what it boils down to. The future of music's going to be people stepping out of their comfort zone just a little bit, regardless of the genre. If you want to make a real huge jump and go from listening to pop music to listening to, black metal, or listening to black metal and then listening to bluegrass, whatever it is, that's what it's going to take to keep things going, personally. What do you think?
I agree. And, it's going back to kind of, selling, the records and stuff like that. Isn't it the new Tom Petty album? I think I heard on satellite radio, which I got free, when I bought a new vehicle here recently. I think Tom Petty's really pushing the vinyl sales for his new stuff. And when you have somebody, everybody knows Tom Petty.
Right.
Like him or whatever, everybody knows him. And when he's pushing something, that means there's something there. And I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. And the other thing is again, we were bashing technology, but I think with more technology, they can produce, but some of the newer vinyl I bought has been really thick. And a lot of I don't remember the exact, weight of the vinyl or whatever. I'm not that into it, but I remember a lot of my 80s metal vinyl that is real thin and flimsy. It's different. The gatefolds and the artwork is a lot better with a lot of the newer bands, like the Skeleton Witch album that I picked up on the tour when we saw them. That thing is excellent. And then you just can't beat a modern day album vinyl with the big gatefold like that. It's just excellent. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, we're gonna kind of close the podcast for this I'm not going to say this week, but our episode 2. Before we go, just make sure to check our album reviews. We don't have a lot up right now, but we're trying to get at least 2 to 3 a day. And another thing to remember is when you are reading them, we're wanting to give you short blurbs and then let you go check the album out, check out the YouTube links that we provide within the article, and then let your mind run with it. We don't want to tell you what you should or shouldn't listen to. We're just giving you our opinion, and then you can figure it out from there. You may agree with us, you may disagree with us, but as far as like that's why we keep the reviews short. There's a lot of websites out there that do long videos over the album, or really long 2-3 page articles over the album. Personally, I think that's boring. I don't need somebody telling me that in depth on what I should or shouldn't listen to on a specific album. You got anything to add before we close out the show?
No, I agree with you on that. I mean, tell me kind of what the music's like. Give me an idea of what I'm going to hear. If you like it, great. If you don't, great. And, give me your opinion and give me a chance to form my own. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. So.
Yep. And again, Unsigned Bands, hit us up on Twitter. We had to change our Twitter handle. I don't remember what it is. We've got it linked though. So if you check out the contact section of our webpage, we've got Twitter, we've got email. You can contact us, let us know about your music. Like I said, Unsigned Bands, we're looking to get compilations together. That may take a while to put together, depending on how many bands we get interested. But let us know what you think of the show. Let us know what you think of the reviews. If you got questions, comments, we get enough questions too. We can submit a Q&A type session thing on the podcast where we just answer all the questions that get sent in. So.
And one thing I do want to add, we do have a Facebook page now. I'm not sure if we got it linked on the contact area of the website or not. If we don't, we'll get that soon. But we do have a Facebook page now, and you can just search for us under the Vault Reviews if we don't have it linked on there. If it's not linked, we'll get it soon. So
there you go. That's news to me. It sounds good. And with that, we'll close it out. Like I said, hopefully we'll try to keep a show up once a week, once every other week, maybe sometimes 2 a week, depends on how time permits. But thanks for checking us out. See you later.
Bye.